Okay, Rose. Let's begin. According to what your father told me, the activation of your thorns requires a very specific emotional state, a very specific line of thought and reasoning. According to him, the thorns are summoned by your predatory instincts. In other words, the desire to kill, to bring harm to what lies before you. In order to call forth the thorns, you will need to want to bring harm. But Mom, I don't know how to do that, Rose replied. I've never wanted to hurt anybody in my entire life. I've never even been in a fight with some other girl over something stupid, even when they wanted to. I definitely don't know what it's like to want to kill someone. How am I supposed to force myself to feel something? Feelings don't work like that, Rose said, still very wary of this entire process. Well, Rose, according to your father, the thorns will appear naturally in times of great stress. For example, when you feel threatened or believe something is going to bring harm to you, your thorns will emerge as a defensive measure, preparing you to fight. But we can't simply rely on that. But your father did explain the process behind summoning the thorns when there is no direct need for them, and how to do so on will. According to him, it's a matter of emotional visualization. You must visualize something that triggers the emotional response. In your father's case, you would always visualize a barathol. A what? A barathol. It's an animal that exists on our home world, an exceptionally dangerous one. Amongst the creatures that exist on our world, barathols stand amongst the most dangerous. Just like your father's race, a barathol is an alpha predator, a carnivorous creature that will devour basically anything, and it is exceptionally good at it. In a conflict between an okar and a barathol, it's basically a coin flip, a fight for life and death, no telling who's going to win. Honestly, if you were to try to place what a barathol looks like in comparison to anything that I've heard of here on Earth, I'd say it looked somewhat like a dragon, and not simply in appearance. The size that is depicted in fairy tale books is actually quite accurate. Many Sky Ray have fallen to the fangs of a barathol. There are some differences, of course. Barathols, like your father and myself, are plants. You'll find that basically all of the most evolved creatures on our world come from plants, rather than here on this world where it seems that other creatures like reptiles and mammals have become the top of the food chain. On our world, plants are at the top of the food chain, and things like mammals and reptiles are far less developed. That sounds terrifying, Rose replied. I mean, are there really things like that on our home world? Yes, Rose, and plenty of them. As I told you before, nature is a balance. There is no life without death. In order for things to live, other things must die, always. Even plants are not beyond this. In order for new trees to grow, old trees must fall and decay, and so forth and so on. The decay of their form giving nutrients and life to newer, younger plants. It is all part of the natural cycle of things. Predators, too, are a part of the natural cycle of things. For without predators to hunt animals, those animals would grow overabundant and simply devour all vegetation, leaving nothing for anyone. So there are predators that hunt them and maintain the balance. Yeah, I get it, Rose replied. But why would Dad picture one of those? I mean, it kind of seems like something like that would make you scared rather than give you the desire to kill. Well, it's actually much simpler than you might think, Rose. Your father pictured a Barathol because it was a Barathol that killed his mother. His father arrived in time to save him. However, his mother was not so fortunate. She fought the creature valiantly and did a great deal of damage to it. But as I said, in a conflict between a Barathol and an Okar, it's basically a coin flip. And unfortunately, the coin flipped away from his mother, and she was killed. With the amount of damage that she did, your father's father, or your grandfather, should you say, was able to do the creature in without much difficulty. But your grandmother was lost. Ever since that day, your father has harbored, or I should say did harbor, a great disdain for the creatures. Natural balance or not, he was unable to stow away his hatred for them, and so had a desire to kill them. By forming an image of a Barathol in his mind, it would trigger his memories, his emotions that were tied to them, and so the thorns would come forth. Rose, you must find something that triggers this reaction within you. Visualize something that would give you the desire to bring harm. It could be anything. According to your father, some Okar don't need such drastic visualizations in order to trigger it. That was simply the method that your father used. According to him, other Okar could activate them simply by visualizing prey, something that they desired to eat. So, the same level of intensity is not required for all Okar. I'm afraid, when it comes to the thorns, that's about all I know, and I won't be of much help in any other capacity. It's up to you to find something that will trigger them, and visualize it. Rose took another look at her hands, staring at them quite intensely, as thoughts began to run through her head. However, was she supposed to find the desire to kill? It didn't feel like it was something that was natural to her. And hunting wasn't much help either. Rose never had any desire to hunt anything. And whenever she pictures food, she doesn't picture an animal that she can prey on, or the desire to hurt it. She simply pictures the food itself. It's not as if she looks at bacon and sees a pig, looks at a hamburger and sees a cow. She just didn't think of it that way. Though after remembering how her mother explained it, it was becoming harder and harder not to. Rose didn't want to say it in front of her mother. She was worried that it might make her feel bad, as the expression on her mother's face wasn't one of joy, like when she was teaching her about the sky ray abilities. She didn't appear as if she was enjoying trying to teach Rose this particular ability at all. So the last thing Rose wanted to do was add to it. But that still left the problem of how. How exactly is she supposed to get these thorns to come out? As she looked at her mother, she saw her looking towards a tree that was centrally placed in front of Rose. It was at that point that she figured out why her mother brought her here. The tree was her target, the object that she was supposed to use her thorns on once she was able to call them out. But how? How do I call them out? Rose thought to herself, looking back to her hands, flexing her fingers somewhat, looking at her nails. She tried thinking, just telling them to come out, in a similar fashion to when she tried to commune with nature. but it seemed to be having no effect at all.